Welcome to the ISM New Jersey webinar series. We would like to say hello to all of our ISM members, our chapter partners, and all our guests to today's program. Please be sure to place your comments or any questions in the chat function for Graham, as we would like to make this an interactive program and we want to hear from you. Today's topic is on supplier relationship management, such a huge topic. And I am pleased to welcome back my dear friend, Graham Crawshaw, who is the Procurement Content Director for CASME, who is joining us from the UK. Graham has the overall responsibility for the quality of CASME's Global Roundtable and Virtual Events program. Prior to joining CASME, Graham spent 20 years working in the procurement for the music industry with an operational and marketing environment. At EMI, Graham regularly supported major artists, including the Beatles, Queen, and Pink Floyd. I think it's so cool. In developing and sourcing their unique packaging requirements, and subsequently worked on the company's first music streaming contract. Graham is also a fellow of SIPS. At this time, I'm going to turn the program over to Graham.
Excellent. Well, Kathy, once again, thank you so much for that great introduction and for the invitation. I think it's either the third or fourth time this calendar year, so delighted to be with you. So let me just share my screen, and then hopefully that's all going to work. And is that sharing the right bit, Kathy? Is that?
Yes, it is.
It is good. I always like to check because sometimes Zoom can play up and you never quite know. So yeah, that's good. So yeah, as Kathy says, we've got the Q&A box. Use that if you've any questions. We'll make sure that we get to that. And we've got some polls for you too, just to make sure that it is interactive. So let me get on supplier relationship management. You know, this is one of my favorite topics, and so delighted to be able to share an update on this. First of all, let me just remind you, if you're not familiar with CASME, give me about a minute to go through just some slides, because it's important you understand the credibility of all the information that I'm going to share with you today. At CASME, we're all about events and networkings, and we put on over 200 events across the world. So we're able to pick up on those different maturity, different insights, the different ways that procurement teams operate. And we then produce reports for our members. But we validate everything by carrying out some benchmarking, different surveys, different lengths, and that just confirms all the information. So yeah, we are global. I think it's important. I mean, as you know, from what Kathy says, I'm based in the UK, but it's really interesting to see what a small world it has become, with procurement all striving with the same challenges wherever you are in the world. So I always thoroughly enjoy being sort of subject to different procurement teams and different locations. In fact, I'm just back from a trip to Singapore and Australia, where I was heavily involved with some procurement conferences there. The CASME membership, we've got over 225 members. This is just some of them. And I like to show this slide, not because of going on about who our members are, but to say this is the source of the information I'm going to share with you. So everything has come from procurement professionals, from companies like this. And of course, you recognize the names here. So it means that it's credible and also very recent. But you know, the main thing about CASME is we don't have any sponsors or suppliers or consultants impacting anything that we do. And I know what that means, because having been in procurement throughout my career, I want a safe environment. I want to know information. I don't want a supplier's sales pitch. So I can assure you, everything I'm going to share with you now has come from, hundreds of procurement professionals, probably thousands, in fact, that have contributed to different events, different benchmarking, so that we've got a really good feel what is going on with supplier relationship management. So that's the plan. The detail that I'm going to share with you is talking about program development, then sort of stakeholder supplier engagement, some information on processes, measurement of SRM, technology, and then also end up with the future. We'll get that crystal ball out and share with you what I'm hearing that is going on in procurement. So that's the plan, and we're going to do that in the next 55 minutes. I will have time for Q&A as well. The benefits of supply relationship management during volatile times. My goodness, we've been through some volatile times and they continue. We know that we've had the pandemic leading into the Russia-Ukraine war, leading to higher interest rates, leading to utility charges going sky high, interest rates, inflation. Where is it actually going to stop? What is the next disaster? But, you know, regardless of the challenges and how volatile it is, procurement is very well positioned to be able to support the business, to support suppliers, and really get through whatever is thrown at us. And I think that's been proven over the last sort of 3 years. So when we did this initial benchmarking, we really identified that those organizations that actively have supply relationship management programs, they were doing better than those that didn't. So working with those suppliers helps during a crisis. So suppliers were offering a greater level of service because that relationship was in place. Now, we use the word trust a lot, and it's actually one of my favorite words in procurement. It's a really difficult one to define, but I think we've all got a good understanding, and we know when trust is in place. We also know when it can be broken. So that trust element with suppliers, I think, is very important when we're talking about supplier relationship management. It's got to be two-way. You can't just trust and the supplier not trust you. It's about that relationship. It's the confidence of that relationship and that trust, knowing that you've got a common objective that you're trying to achieve. Now, also the success of SRM is communicating, making it clear what you're doing, getting it transparent, so there's no uncertainty as far as the supplier is concerned, but also just sharing internally what is going on. Procurement is all about relationships. I think we know that. The good news is you may hear a lot in the press about artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, all the others, but you know what? None of that can help with managing relationships. It's a human activity. So procurement functions may get smaller. You may not have as many people through automation, but fundamentally managing that relationship with the supplier is going to be the skill and the exercise that procurement category managers really get tasked and are responsible for. So I think that is why SRM is so important. It's about those relationships. It's about what you can build and work with the supplier. We're going to do some polls, and I'm going to ask Kathy to launch the first poll today, and that should hopefully come up on the screen. So I want to get a feel for the audience. We've got 44 of us on the call, so that's a great. So thank you for being here. How would you evaluate the performance of your company's supplier relationship management during the last 3 years? Okay, so think about the not too distant past, but not looking future. What has the value been over the last 3 years? And you can see, just pick one, single choice, and we've got some of the options there, starting with significant value, some value, limited, no value, or no SRM in place. And I think this will give us a good feel for this particular group as to what's important and where you are on this this journey. So Kathy, you can see how people are responding. When we've got a good high percentage of responses, we can close the poll and then have a look at what you're saying. Excellent. Good. Oh, this is really interesting. So I'm hoping everyone could see the results. As you only selected one, we could use the percentages, and it's split. So 29% saying some value, 29% also saying limited or minimal value, 19% saying significant, and then 24 saying there's no SRM in place. Interesting. So I don't know, maybe it's a bit of not quite as confident as I've been saying as what I've seen, but I think even so, significant and some value, we're at 50%. So I think that means that half of you are you recognize there is some value there. So I think that means we're on the right track, and let's continue to explore and develop this. So let's look at program development at this stage. And I've just remembered, we forgot to say between us, we're going to share these slides with you. So I'm not going to call them all out. You can use them as a reference document. And I know that Kathy puts all this recording on the ISM New Jersey chapter YouTube channel. So you can listen to it again. Or if you're one of many listening to the recording, then welcome. So procurement's role, let's just see, because we can't do everything. We're asked to do so much at the moment that sort of, is this just one more task that we've got to do? We're busy trying to achieve cost savings, cost avoidance, all the ESG criteria. We're dealing with risk. We're dealing with governance, so much going on. There's got to be value. There's got to be a purpose for supply relationship management in order to justify it. When we did the survey, these are the top items that identify what procurement's role is. First of all, define a strategy and a process for supply relationship management. Audit. You in procurement, you're in control. You can decide what this is going to look like. And you can't do supply relationship management to all suppliers. We know that. I think I've got some slides that cover that, but you can only do it to those where the relationship is so important that it warrants doing this work. So you've defined the program. You've got to have support. Again, don't try and do this unless you've got top-down support, recognizing that it is a commitment from the organization. It's not just what you were doing yourself. I think this alignment, we're talking more and more about alignment. Procurement has got to make sure not only is it fully aligned with its stakeholders' business objectives, but then goes all the way back. And therefore, you've got to have that alignment in terms of what the program is going to deliver for you, what you're going to achieve as a result of putting all this effort into supplier relationship management. You can't work with everyone. You've got to pick your stakeholders. You've also got to pick the suppliers. And therefore, you want those that have got the right relationships. Otherwise, it's going to be hard work. You need the business stakeholders to be on board with you. Then you can actually identify, segment your suppliers, which ones you really want to be part of the program. And fundamentally, the last point was you've got to demonstrate the value. You've got to really say to your business, well, the reason we're doing this is because we believe it is going to add value, and give some examples of what that might look like. Some of the other points that still are some of the objectives for doing a supplier relationship management program. Because as I said, you've got competing priorities. You can't do everything. So you've got to have a very clear objective as to what you're trying to achieve through this program. And I think, yeah, this summary is pretty good at just sort of getting across those key points. So what we're looking at is this alignment, this working with suppliers so they see you as a customer of choice. It's a badly abused phrase. We're always talking about customer of choice, but I do think it's an important one because it gets you thinking from the supplier's perspective, not yours, not your business stakeholders. What does the supplier think of you? Do you pay them on time? That is the fundamental one. Do you listen? Do you take on board innovation? Is that relationship truly in place The supplier knows that that trust is embedded within the agreement that you've got in place. Inevitably, those that you're working with means that there will be greater transparency, a greater sharing. Now, that may mean strategy, it may mean about costs or cost breakdowns, but it should be perfectly reasonable to warrant the understanding of that transparency. And to bring it right up to date, what I've seen in procurement over the last probably 8 weeks, maybe 10, is procurement becoming much more aggressive with suppliers when suppliers are saying, look, prices need to go up because of inflation. So what I'm hearing and seeing from procurement is like, yeah, fine, have your supply relationship management in place. That's absolutely perfectly acceptable. But don't let the supplier get away with just saying, look, inflation means the price needs to go up. They need to offer that transparency. They need to offer that breakdown. They need to justify what are their input costs mean that the price should increase. So I'm seeing a lot of pushback from procurement to suppliers, making them accountable for any price increases that they're looking to put forward. So really interesting at this time of very great volatility. Even now, SRM really does help because it's an attitude. It's a mind of attitude. It is that trust. It is that acceptance that transparency is important. And also picking up on the point here, you should really be developing mutual benefits, mutual objectives between your supplier and procurement, so that it's something you work together on, because the supplier is also operating in a very volatile time. So if there's anything they can do to make life easier for themselves, which also gives you a benefit, then that's exactly the sort of conversation that you should be having at the moment. And if that helps reduce the pressure on price, then that definitely is a demonstration of the win and the value that supplier relationship management can bring. And by the way, for all your other suppliers, you've still got to take that pretty aggressive approach. But if you're not in that same relationship, then maybe you should just be more demanding and expecting the supplier to provide you with that level of information. We also did a survey that said, look, it's not always easy. It's easy to say, put in an SRM program, but in practice, it is not easy. You'll get pushback. You may have people in the business that just don't recognize it, that don't see that suppliers and your business can have a strong relationship like we've just been talking about. So the reason it may fail, number one reason, is actually company culture. Well, you will know the culture of your company, and you'll know whether the words like trust, relationships are within your company's culture, or whether you take a more hostile approach to working with your suppliers. And of course, I've just described the extremes. Most companies are somewhere in the middle there that will be working to a lesser or greater extent. SRM can be a challenge when you've got suppliers working with your executives and there are existing relationships in place. They may or may not be helpful, but it was certainly identified as the number 2 challenge that the procurement faces. We also know that for some companies, they did well during the pandemic, but with all the other pressures, has it been possible for procurement to remain and retain its strategic position within the organization? Again, only you will know that. No surprise, limited resources. I have yet to come across a procurement company anywhere in the world, a procurement organization, sorry, I'm talking too quickly. I have yet to come across a procurement organization anywhere in the world that has got more resource than it needs. It just doesn't happen. However good we are at justifying resource, and talent and individual. It just doesn't happen. It's something that we all struggle with. So you've got to work within your means, bearing in mind the skill set, the people, the capacity that you've got to actually embrace supplier relationship management. The question as to who should do the work is also a debate and comes back to your company and your company's culture. Is SRM handled and managed separately by a small team, or is it the role of the category manager? Now, I've done lots of work on this over the last few years, trying to understand which companies it's separate, which companies it's part of the category manager's role. And I've drawn a blank. There is no logic. It doesn't matter on profitability, the geographic spread, the number of people, the technology, the sector. Nothing ever really confirms whether it should be the role of the category manager or whether you should have a separate team. So yeah, they're definitely some of the challenges that are faced. Of course, you've got to do a sales job. Well, I think in procurement, half the time we're doing sales job. That's what we're about. Often selling to our suppliers, trying to bring in that innovation, or selling to our business stakeholders the value and all the good things that procurement can actually do. And you know what? SRM, it's no different. So here's some of the points that we've heard in terms of you can't keep everybody happy all the time, but you've got to select your stakeholders. You've got to do some mapping. You've got to work out what do they want, how can you support, and then how can supply relationship management really give that additional value into the organization. So definitely some selling that needs to be done at that point. Typically, well, actually, stakeholders sometimes don't even understand procurement. Let's face it. It's often a tough job to sell procurement, let alone supply relationship management. Depending on the stakeholder, they may have a very adversarial approach to working with suppliers. And so there's a bit of not only that selling, but the stakeholders need that understanding of what really you can do and put in place. So here, promoting those objectives, saying why you're doing it, defining what you're trying to achieve, and then have a bit of a framework and some policies really defining how you're actually going to do that. That way, at least the stakeholders then start to get on board. I hinted at supplier segmentation. And one of my questions whenever I'm having a conversation where it's a bit two-way, this is a bit one-way, but if we're all together in a room, I will be asking you, how many suppliers are in your supplier relationship management program relative to the number of suppliers that you've got on your books? And there's always an interesting one. And I still hear those organizations that say may have 10,000 suppliers and trying to do SRM to 2,000. It just doesn't happen. Supplier relationship management, if you've got 10,000 suppliers, you're probably looking at the top 40. Any more, and actually the program's diluted. You're not actually doing it effectively. It's just impossible because of the resource that's required and the attention and the conversations and the way of working with suppliers. So what you can see here is the way that you may wish to segment your suppliers to really work out, well, do we want to do a supplier relationship management program with these companies? Are they critical? What's the spend look like? Are they treating us as strategic, or are we just a tactical customer? Are we low value to them? You may be spending a lot of money with them, but that doesn't mean that they see that it's a reciprocal relationship. So there are lots of variables, so it's definitely worth taking the time to do this segmentation and really understand what that should look like. So on that note, Kathy, let's do the second poll and ask the question, how does your company evaluate suppliers for its SRM program? So how does it evaluate suppliers as SRM candidates? And this time you could select two. In practice, you could probably tick all of these, but that would be boring because we'd see lines going right the way through. So we've got the multiple choice. So please select 2 from spend volume, criticality of the goods or services that they're delivering, the classification of the supplier, whether they are strategic or standard, whether the value regarding continuity of supply. I mean, that continues to be so important for so many organizations. And then cultural, if I could say it, cultural compatibility. Are they likely to want to work with you? How will they see you? Will they see you as, yeah, customer of choice, someone we want to be sharing information with, or finally, just no SRM program in place? So those are the options. Give you a few seconds to complete that, and then we'll sort of take a look, because I think that's going to give us a bit of a feel for what that looks like. How are we doing, Kathy? Are people helping out and responding?
Yeah, we have about 63% right now.
Okay, we're getting there. And just a quick reminder, we can have the Q&A box. So we'll come to that when I've finished going through the slides, and be very happy to give you either my personal perspective or my experience from constant conversations with procurement professionals. Let's have a look. I think we've given everyone enough time. It's not too difficult, the options there. Right, okay, let's take a look at this then, Kathy. So criticality, you can't use the percentage because you've added 2, remember. So criticality of goods and services is the longest blue line, followed by spend volume, and then the assessment strategic standard, the value regarding continuity of supply, which actually is quite low. And that's good news story, because I'm taking that to mean that you've got your supply chain in place. And therefore, all the issues that we've had over the last few years, from the pandemic through to the Russia war, that's now taken care of as best you can. The cultural compatibility is a low scoring one. So interesting. But yeah, criticality of goods and services, not be funny, it's pretty obvious, because it's that combined with the spend, which means it's justifiable to do more work with these suppliers. So yeah, thank you for that that contribution and answering the polls there. Why might suppliers be skeptical? I mean, it does happen. It's all very well, you're trying to achieve something, but as I hinted just before, the supplier's also going to be on board. They've got to have that same culture. They've got to have that trust. They've got to give that long-term, ideally long-term commitment to helping you with different resources, different activities. But they may not be on board, and that's something to respect and be aware of. So I think whenever you're doing your supplier selection, that's probably one of the questions. Do you want to participate? Do you really see that this is also going to add value to your business? So you're constantly looking at it as a two-way sort of process. What you can say is that the value is there for the suppliers. And so we had this conversation about, well, actually, what is all about this, this value? Why are the suppliers going to join your SRM program, where by definition, they're going to be more involved and do more activities? Well, I think it's all about the activities that you do with the suppliers. And typically, if you're going to get your senior executives involved with them, then that's quite a great opportunity. Senior people at the supplier, senior people within your organization being brought together to have the opportunity for conversation. And then typically linked to that is the sharing of the goals and sharing of your company's sort of forward-thinking strategy as to what you're looking to do. Of course, the supplier will be looking at this as an opportunity for more business. It's interesting, when I have this analysis, when I have conversations like this in the APAC region, this is the one point that drives suppliers' interest. They all want more volume or to provide more services. Really interesting that focus entirely on wanting to do more. The rest of the world, it's more of a more mature outlook. And so there are other opportunities, there are other ways of working, whether it's simplification, whether it is just doing things better and more efficiently. So that's one of the very few differences where when you're dealing with different organizations around the world, the different ways that procurement and suppliers actually work. I like the one about the communication channels, because let's face it, things go wrong. We always know that. We know it. We have to respond. But if you've got that enhanced relationship with the supplier, then it's much easier in order to correct mistakes, avoid communication issues, and really just put back on the right track what needs to be in place. I think also this extended contract terms, I think suppliers like longevity of contracts. I think that's also a helpful tool in these times of higher inflation. And so there's some trade-off that can be had here. So again, the whole thing is supporting and giving value and benefit both to you as the procuring organization and also to the suppliers. I do need a quick drink. Bear with me. Don't forget the questions if you want to ask any questions. What is typically included in the SRM program? I really wanted to tease out some of the details because ultimately it's like, well, what are you doing? We call it a program. We've got that in place. What is actually happening? What are you going to be doing? And so when we did this survey to CASME members, this was really the output that we got from it. So establishing KPIs and scorecards specifically around SRM. Now, it may not be as easy to do it as a quantitative KPI. So it may end up being a qualitative, but nevertheless, having a mechanism in place that you could review these objectives and keep the program on track is a good thing. Getting that framework in place, defining how you're going to work with suppliers, what it's going to mean to them, how you're going to manage it internally. And similarly, in terms of the schedule of meetings, conversations, and communication. So making it clear to the supplier, this, because of their status, is how you're going to communicate and discuss things. I think it is all about the meetings and the conversations that you have. And I think for those companies that have got effective SRM programs, there is this division. There's a split in the meetings. Some of the meetings, obviously, quarterly business reviews, many of us do them. But I think the difference is it's not the time where you complain that something was late, something went wrong, there was a challenge. That just doesn't, that's not part of it at all. It's about having those meaningful conversations whereby you can actually talk more strategically, talk from an SRM perspective, and put the day-to-day, more tactical work to one side. And I think that's quite a differentiator for the work that that you can do. Finally, this 360-degree review, really interesting one. It's not something you're going to do day one, but certainly getting that feedback from suppliers as to what they genuinely think about you, how you work, whether you pay on time, whether you communicate effectively, whether you're reasonable in your demands, is very much part of an SRM program, because that gives you insights as to what the supplier is experiencing and feeling there. So I think getting that in place is definitely one of those sort of good things that an SRM program can deliver. We'd asked our members, look, how are you going to develop all this? How are you going to measure the effectiveness of an SRM program? And it's not easy. Let's face it, it's not as easy as you think. So to actually get that ROI calculation done, there are too many areas that really are intangible or are connected or related to other aspects of the work procurement is doing. It makes no sense to say we've achieved a cost avoidance or a cost saving of X through our negotiation, through our procurement work. And in addition, we've achieved Y through our SRM program. That's just going to create hostility internally, probably more than anything. So actually seeing it holistically, seeing the value, the benefits that can be brought, are definitely the ways that people are measuring the value of the SRM program. So you can see here, identifying, mitigating risks, resolving issues, holding quality of events with suppliers, a focus on innovation. Innovation's an interesting one. Again, one of those abused terms. I always look at innovation as just incremental value that's coming from the supplier relationship. And so if you've got innovation, you want to make sure the supplier brings it to you rather than your competitors, because otherwise you're going to miss out. And if you don't respond, if you don't accept or listen or work with a supplier, then there's that risk that you may dramatically miss out on the innovation. So lots of sharing, lots of working together with suppliers ultimately will give you that benefit. So we did specifically ask, what value are you getting from the SRM program? And here we got the list of the top 6 items that our members were saying. So stakeholders, the business recognizing that procurement's involvement with that relationship is adding to the business overall. So it's a really good thing to be involved with. The fact that it's easier to then negotiate cost savings or cost avoidance by looking at risk and by potentially deferring cost increases as well, because that relationship is so strong. You want the value comes from suppliers really understanding the benefit of the strategic partnership, recognizing opportunities to provide more, and also just help in terms of compliance and really just offer that mutual benefit. So it's difficult. It's not something that you could put a dollar amount on. But overall, when you piece together everything that I've been sort of talking about, you realize that it does collectively help. It's a way forward of really building those relationships and making that strong partnerships with your suppliers. I often get asked about technology and tools. We need an app for everything nowadays. The number that are specifically out there to manage supplier relationship management are pretty limited. In practice, we know that companies use other CRM, customer relationship management software, one of which is Salesforce, but of course other systems are available. That can help in terms of keeping track and managing the relationship. So that's definitely one way of doing it. But in terms of overall SRM, it's still the skepticism around some of the modules that you can get from, especially from the large ERP suppliers. So I'm being very diplomatic on that. There is no single solution that's going to manage everything. So that was our feedback from our members literally a few months ago. And it is staggering. The majority of our members are still using fundamental technology like Excel, Microsoft spreadsheets, using the Office suite to generate charts and tools, maybe moving to Power BI if that's a resource that you're using within the organization, but really sharing documents, sharing information, whichever system, whether it is Teams, SharePoint, or any of those other file sharing software. So I think we've still got some way to go. And I think part of that is it's difficult for procurement to put a business case together for SRM technology and tools. Now, in fairness, I think the costs are coming down, so anything's likely to change. I think we'll review this and look at it in 12 months' time to see if the landscape is any different. But at the moment, if you're using Excel for this, then don't be too concerned. Many organizations are. So yeah, sorry, this is I knew I had a chart with the tools that procurement is saying, so this is not the supplier that provides these, procurement is saying, yeah, this is sort of quite helpful. This is what we are using at this moment. I'll say, not endorsing them, not recommending them. This is what procurement is saying that they are actually using. I think the other point is that we heard a lot of procurement category managers saying, look, if we're going to do this program, we need to be trained in it. We need to know what we're doing in practice. So don't assume that you can just put these programs in place and ignore all the communication and training that goes on. And so this is the survey that we did that identified the top 7 items in terms of training that's going to really help procurement professionals. Not real anything revolutionary, not too much of a surprise here. Obviously, the number one is on-the-job training, just making sure people are fully aware of systems. Many organizations have SRM support delivered through their center of excellence. That gets global consistency of what you're trying to achieve. So depending on your approach to a center of excellence, whether that is a team of people or one person, then that can really help if they look after the definitions, the processes and policies all relating to SRM. So I think that's the main point. I don't know if there's anything else that I wanted to share on that one. I want to go to the final poll that we're going to do tonight, and I need to leave time for responding to the point. So what have you been doing? What significant changes have been made to your company's SRM program really since the pandemic? And I'm using the word pandemic, but if there was an umbrella term to cover pandemic, Russia war, utilities, interest rates and inflation, then I would, but I've been lazy and just used the word pandemic, mainly because that's what we used in our last survey. So what changes have been made? You can make one choice. So either no significant change, addressing regional versus global supply, a greater focus on continuity of supply, increased segmentation, additional support and involvement for senior management, or a formalization of the SRM program. I'm probably being a bit harsh saying that you've got to only select one, but you know what? The poll's set up, we can't change it now. But really, that's a tough one. So I want you to pick the one that's most suitable to your role in your organization. All of this is anonymous, so you can just be honest and put that information to us. Give you a few more seconds as Kathy can see how many people have responded. And then just continue on this last few slides, just to complete the picture of SRM.
Okay, we're about 57% participated. Do you want me to end it now? Yeah,
I think we're good in the interest of time. So thank you for sharing that. Right, interesting. Really interesting, 54% saying, look, it's about that continuity of supply. So that's been the change, which actually validates the original poll that we did 10 minutes or so ago. So because the pandemic caused us all to be nervous and focus on continuity of supply, it really demonstrates that actually, you know what, SRM has got a big role to play in that. I know 38% of you said no significant changes, but nevertheless, I'm just going with the longer one, just to really sort of say, you know what, this is the direction that we're going in. So thank you, Kathy. That's good to see. And the results of our own survey that we did just a few months ago also confirm that greater focus on continuity of supply. So that really, the pandemic and all those other volatile disaster situations has really focused on making sure that SRM actually can help and deliver that continuity of supply. Okay, what's next? Crystal ball time. We need to work out, what are we going to do? How are we going to move this forward? Because we can't be complacent. We've got to continue to refine and develop all of these SRM programs. So the view is, yeah, procurement's got to continue to prioritize the strategic reputation that we've got and really continue on that planning and business continuity. So we probably need more training. We need greater visibility of what's going on across the organization. Those organizations that are global, that is still a massive challenge to get clean data on a global basis. We're then going to look at the technology that can actually help us support some of these SRM programs and ultimately add in more automation that's really going to help and assist in that way. I think there's strong link between SRM and change management. Again, one of these values, procurement is all about change management. And I've been controversial. I've attended a number of conferences recently, and I've seen everyone is talking about procurement and transformation, digitalization, and putting in systems. And I took a risk, and I was on a stage, there were 300 people in front of me. And I actually said, you know what, if you are working in a organization where there is no transformation, no change, no systems being developed, if anything like that is not happening and you're just stagnant, get another job. It's that clear cut. Procurement is so dynamic at the moment that you want to be part of an organization where a lot is happening. So if you really do feel that you're absolutely going nowhere, there are plenty of companies that really are making changes. So it is all about change management and the way that procurement can work with the business and with the suppliers to move things forward. And as you can see from the last one here, link all that lot with ESG. It'll be even more time consuming for you, but even so, that is the direction that this is going, as ESG filters more and more into SRM programs. I wanted to conclude by sharing some very latest information. In fact, we only had this confirmed probably 10 days ago in practice. And we did this benchmarking, looking at where procurement spends its time. And I asked the question in the survey that said, look, what activities would procurement like to spend more time doing? And I think it's a fascinating list. Now, obviously, you could see here that supply relationship management is number 4 on the list. The one above it, stakeholder engagement. But I think actually I threw this slide in because I thought it was a great way to end the conversation, but also just to get you thinking to what you would like to spend more time doing. Would you like the opportunity to do more SRM, or is there other priorities that are interesting you and exciting you to want to work on? And so I thought, well, look, this is the entire list. This gives you a feel for where procurement would like to go if it had more time. And my final slide is a bit of a complex one. You know what, I'm not going to call it out or detail it because it's a bit intense, but you could see different statements that have been made and how people have responded. And there's a great emphasis on supplier relationship management throughout this chart. So there's definitely one to look at later. But I thought, really, there's no question of it. Those companies that are doing well on supplier relationship management are those that are making the most progress, becoming more strategic, and really driving procurement going forward. I've spoken probably longer than I should, 50 minutes. I hope, great to see no one is left. So thank you for bearing with us and staying with us. I'm going to stop sharing and invite Kathy back to the conversation, and we'll see if we've got any, I don't think we've got any questions, but see if we've got any points that need to be raised or shared. I hope that's been of interest. If you disagree with anything I've said, of course, that's perfectly okay. I'm how many thousand miles away, so you can't throw anything at me. But please remember, I haven't made any of this up. I haven't even thought it through, even though I'm spend all my career in procurement. All of this data, these statements have come from conversations, benchmarking, and discussions with literally thousands of procurement professionals. And all I've done is consolidate and tell the story for you. So I hope that's been of interest. Kathy, have we got any points or anything that we'd like to share with anyone in the last few minutes?
Well, we did get a question in while you were speaking. Sometimes small and medium enterprises focus most on price to select suppliers. How can you join a collective buying network to get better quality at the best pricing?
Interesting. I'm not sure that always works. And actually, we're back to culture. I'm going to get your view on this, Kathy, in a minute. So here's the heads up on this.
Uh-oh.
So this collective buying network, the other word is consortium. I'm not sure whether that's a word used in North America, consortia. Depending where you are in the world, it will either be very successful or disaster. In Germany, for example, they love consortia. There are a lot of them. They really are very effective. Many other parts of the world, they don't work. And I'll tell you the reason why they fail. And that is because everyone's got individual requirements. And the problem is, if you put in your volume and you are also dealing with other companies that also have got similar volumes, if circumstances change, it can very quickly fall apart. So I'm quite skeptical of this. I think for most organizations, you want to be in control of what you're actually buying. You want the relationships. Now, it may not be an extensive SRM relationship like we've been talking about, but I think you want that control and relationship with the supplier. So it may get short-term pricing advantage, but is it sustainable long term? That's the bit I would question. And I'm not also sure you end up with better quality. Actually, I hate that word because quality is all about specification. It either adheres to the specification or it isn't. So again, if you've got differing understandings around specification, that can mean these buying networks don't prove successful. Anything to add to that, Kathy? Sorry to put you on the spot.
No,
I was
not
put on the spot.
not I at all. I know we did. I can remember seeing more of this years ago in the United States, but I haven't actually heard many people talking about it over the last probably 5 to 10 years. So, but that's just from my perspective.
But you know, Kathy, you speak to so many people. I think if it was still a thing that was done by companies, I'm sure you would have heard, and some people would have been saying, some people would have been asking you to do a session on networks or consortia buying. I say, if you're really interested, take a look what goes on in Germany. I've no idea. I think culturally, they're more disciplined, more structured. And I think that's almost the culture and framework that you would need in order to make it successful. But anyway, thanks for the question anyway.
Yeah, very good question. Okay, I have another, I think it's a comment. One of the best parts of SRM are the suppliers are generally thrilled to get feedback and data from their customers. If you show them that you are tracking their performance, they will usually improve. Any comments on that?
I think spot on. Yeah, absolutely.
I think spot on too.
And you know what? People like to be liked. I think that's the point. And procurement, we're all people doing business with people. So it's a relationship business. That is our future. And so actually the suppliers like to be liked. And I think what we're doing through the SRM program is just shaping that into some sort of structure that really gives it longevity and value for both organizations.
Yeah, it's all about the relationship. So you're building the relationship. So yeah, definitely. Another comment came in.
That's a bit of a follow-up.
Yeah, now
point.
with all the digital catalogs, JIT Supply is great for small enterprises. So
just be cautious. That would be my say. I mean, I agree with digital catalogs, but does it necessarily make sense to do that with others, or are you just able to do that with your own requirements that you've got? And just-in-time supply, there's a lot of commodities, a lot of components out there where it's immediately very high risk. Just-in-time supply, if it doesn't matter if it's a bit late, I would say go with it. But generally, in response to inflation, in response to all those disasters I've been talking about, companies are adding more stock, putting more stock throughout the supply chain, and paying less attention to just-in-time principles. I think that's one of those fundamental changes. So be very careful would be my warning on that one.
Okay. If there's any other questions, please, put it in the chat or the Q&A, and we'd love to hear from you. I do want to, at this time, thank you, Graham, for bringing another important topic to our ISM community. We really do appreciate it. And we certainly appreciate all the data that you bring to the ISM community.
Excellent.
Real time data, which is
Yes.
the important thing.
Yeah, excellent. No, you're very welcome, Kathy. And I'm delighted that we said before the call we'll work out a program, and I'd love to join you in the fall. I will be at ProcureCon East in Florida in September. So if anyone's attending that 3-day conference, I'd be delighted to see you. I attended last year and met people from that had listened to some of the podcasts there. So I'm going to be there in September, which won't be that far away. The time seems to be going away very, very quickly. But yeah, thank you for the opportunity to share with you today. And I look forward to the next discussion. I'm on LinkedIn. I know we both are, Kathy. So anyone that likes to, I'm more controversial on LinkedIn. You can be that because it's me talking as opposed to I'm being on my best behavior today. But if you love to connect with anyone on LinkedIn, and look forward to seeing you at a future New Jersey chapter ISM event.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks to everybody who joined us today. We will be sending out the recording for today, so you can definitely do a listen again if you think that you missed something. We will send out Graham's slides as well, and everybody also gets a continuing educational hour for today's program, because we are an educational chapter here. So
Absolutely,
everything that we do, we promote education here, especially for your credentials. So at this point, I'm going to close out the program. I'm going to say thank you again, and everybody have a great rest of the week.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. Take care, everyone. See you soon.
Thank you, Graham. Bye-bye.